working full time and building your business, and you're like, how do people do this? Well, I have a great podcast episode for you today with my friend Marlène. So, little backstory. Marlène owns a company by the name of My Health Concierge. It started because her grandmother needed support as she was aging, as many of our parents and grandparents do. And she really saw a need for this type of support in the Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Florida area, right? So let's back up though a little bit, which is Marlène comes into my dating coaching. Many of you know I was doing dating coaching. We come in, we have an instant connection. We start coaching together. We've coached on and off together for years, and through that developed a really amazing friendship. And what I love is that Marlène trusted me to say, hey, I actually want to build a business. Like, I still want to work full time. I love what I do. I make good money, but there's this real need down here. And so what I thought would be really advantageous for all of you listening is to talk to Marlène, who's here with me live, to talk about what it's like to, one, have that idea spark based off your personal experience. How do you work through that courage to say, I'm going to go for it? And then also, how do you balance it when you have so much going on in your life? So we're going to get right into it. So Marlène, you and I have
Yes.
a conversation and you go, hey, so what do you think about this idea? Walk me through what was going on in your personal life at that time where you were like, I think I want to start this business. What was going on with your grandmother?
Mm-hmm. Well, my grandmother, per usual, just taking care of her and seeing to her care. She's pretty, believe it or not, self-sufficient even at 104. But yes, but still, I'm basically her caregiver. But I'll share with you what really prompted me to start this business was the start of COVID.
Hmm.
What happened during COVID is that many individuals lost access to their loved ones the moment they
Yeah.
entered a healthcare facility, an acute care facility, and even going to doctor's offices was very limited. Who could be with them, to of course, rightly so, minimize the spread of the disease. But at the same time, having a loved one in the hospital when you can't get access to them is very challenging. So that's what kind of triggered. And I was getting a lot of phone calls
Hmm.
from friends and family who needed support during that time. To give you
Wait,
some background, I've been in healthcare for 25 plus years.
I want to pause you
And
just for a second. You said something super
yeah,
important that I think a lot of people will miss if I don't
sure.
call it out. Did you
Mhm.
guys hear that Marlène said that at the time when COVID was happening, that her friends were reaching out to her? Her friends were reaching out to her because they too were supporting an elderly parent, either near or far. And because
Mhm.
Marlène has connections in the healthcare industry in Miami and the Fort Lauderdale area, but in addition to that, her own personal experience of helping her grandmother,
Mhm.
that it's kind of like a friend calling another friend and saying, could
Yep.
you, what did you do when you were in this situation? So I want to call that out, Marlène, because that is so
Yes.
important, because what happened was two things. One, people trusted you to come to you and say, you've been through this. What was your experience like?
Yes.
Second part is that you were forthcoming in that information. I would do this, I wouldn't do that. Hey, if I can call this doctor for you, I'd be happy to. Like, knowing you're such a
Mhm.
connector.
Mhm.
And then the third part of that is the personal experience, right? Of like,
Yep.
hey, there's really a market for this and I'm really good at this. And then it's that leap of faith of, okay, so then I'm actually going to start charging for this because there's a real need
Right.
for it. I'm only one person. I could actually staff more people to be able to support. So I just want to pause there for just a second,
Yes.
because you responded to the call that was being forced on you. I mean, I just said this conversation with someone else today. If you really look for the signs that you're supposed to do something, how you know it is people will actually start asking you the same thing again and again and again. It's your choice whether you respond to the call or not, so to speak.
Yes.
So,
Truth.
right. 25 years into the healthcare industry, You were saying.
Yes. Yes, and you know, that afforded me the ability to be responsive, yes, to them, to their questions. How do I handle this? What questions do I ask? How do I get the physicians talking to each other? How do I prepare for an emergency? How do I share information with providers? And then that those are in emergent situations. And through that dialogue, I found there's really a need for preventative, just like you have preventative care for yourself, right? You're taking care of yourself so you stay well.
Hmm.
There's the same thing with the kind of non-medical side of healthcare, which is, do I have all my paperwork in order, my medical legal paperwork, which is extremely important,
Hmm.
to understand and have others understand what are your needs and wishes, who makes decisions for you, what are your primary conditions, medical conditions, medications that go along with that, and really build a portfolio for yourself that's easily portable and accessible,
Hmm.
so that when that emergency happens, because we all know
They
that
will.
they will, especially
Hmm.
as we age, so that that's available. So that's one component of it. And I found that out by having dialogues during an emergency, realizing, wow, they are not prepared. They don't
Hmm.
have all this information, right? So really the where I start when I have conversations with clients is, let's take a look at what is the baseline today with what you have related to medical, legal, and information around that.
Hmm.
And then I dive in to, well, what are the care gaps, right? Like, for example, when my grandmother fell, broke her femur, had surgery and rehab in the hospital, when she was coming home post acute, there was a need for care at home that
Hmm.
we, even if we wanted to, we, her family, could not provide.
Hmm.
So there's the running around, determining the home care, who's going to take care of her, how long, is there going to be rehab at home? All those things were care gaps, what I call care gaps, to be identified to say, okay, how are we going to fill these care gaps so that she gets what she needs? And then if there was a need to get to an appointment, get additional medications, whatever it would be, there would be a list of things. These are the gaps. Who's gonna, how are we going to solve those, and when, and to kind of follow her care on an ongoing basis. So someone like that example, like my grandmother that is coming home post acute, there's a lot more to do, yes.
Oh
But
yeah.
if you have someone that's simply an aged person, right, a senior, someone that's home alone, or a couple home that they look out for each other, but they may need more care. And so maybe today, let's say, our parents are fine, yes, they take care of each other, they can handle things, and then all of a sudden we start noticing, oop, they have a new diagnosis. What is that? How is that going to impact them at home today? Now, is anything going to change? Can they drive? Do they understand instructions when they're at the doctor's office? These are things that could be a barrier to the preventative that I was talking about. And so so it's a journey. Our life is a journey, and part of it is our health care. And so, yes, you wanted to ask a question?
I was just gonna say too. Finish your thought though on the healthcare, because then I want to share
Yeah.
something
So
important.
yeah. So the thing is that there's this whole medical component, where the doctors are, one individual primary care physician that the individual has will take care of them. Yes, but they may not have line of sight with all other things that are happening. They may not understand that there's another maybe specialist and medications
Right.
coming from that specialist. they may not, there's also things related to insurance, or there's a lot of non-medical things that and decisions to be made that a medical doctor, even if they're a concierge physician, they'll do a lot, but they won't get involved.
Right.
It's really challenging for them to get involved with helping families make decisions that are non-medical.
Well, even when it comes to, hey, I know when my grandmother and grandfather were aging, we eventually decided before we move them into a nursing home, why don't we try to get a nurse to come around periodically? Even
Yep.
nurses won't do that to that
Yep.
extent. So I think you bring up a couple things. One, the service that you offer is comprehensive. So I just want to recap, you guys, based on the experience that she had with her grandmother and saying, okay, my grandmother goes to a dentist, my grandmother goes to a dermatologist, my grandmother goes to a specialist for her eyes, she might go for a primary care, whatever the case may be. No one's talking to each other as it relates to her specialists. So Marlène decided to create create a concierge service that says, hi, we are one-stop shopping. We are this one entity that can actually help your aging parent who lives in the Fort Lauderdale, Miami area. And whether you live locally or not, aka the daughter or son, whatever that may be, we can provide this level of care so that one, your parent goes to their appointments on time, they get there safely, they have somebody there who can take notes and has access to the medical records. We also noticed that the copay was a little bit higher this time than normal. And so rather than you having to deal with insurance, we'll call on behalf, like it's kind of full access to that person. And I think what people don't realize if their parents are healthy right now is the level of stress, the pressure, the time it takes, and let's not forget to mention the grief. Because when that happens, we had my mom had 5 siblings. Okay, so Nana and Papa, and then there was the 5. Oh my fucking God. They were like all at ends as to who needs to do what, and oh, but I took her here and you took her here, and it was a clusterfuck. And I remember my uncle was the healthcare proxy, who I think you've met, or at least I told him about you, because he was thinking maybe I should do this as a concierge service like up in Mass. And I said, well, before you do that, you should talk to Marlène, because it's interesting to know what's actually going in. And he decided not to go into it. But that being said, he goes, holy shit, there is a real need, right? Because when you're, whether you have 5 or 6 siblings or whether you're just the one, whether we were fortunate that we all lived within driving distance, but could you imagine for many of us who snowbird, like you might have an elderly parent or grandparent that lives, down in Florida year-round part-time, like they don't have somebody who they can rely on.
Exactly.
It's so important that you offer this. And for anyone who's listening and your brain's starting to spark, not only for your own personal experience in your business, but you're also thinking, well, holy shit, I have a parent or grandparent down there that could definitely use this level of support. I want to really strongly encourage you to click the link that I'm going to share with you in the show notes. To contact Marlène and at least just do a consultation to talk about, hey, what does this cost? What does it look like in terms of getting set up? Because it's so impactful. And I think that's one thing that we who have the kind of success that I think other people see and say, oh, wow, she's killing it in business. They don't realize that we're not doing it for the money. We're doing it because we see a real need in our life and in other people's lives to be helpful, to be supportive, to make sure that they kind of have that they have the kind of care, and I remember you saying something along the lines of like, God, what if my grandmother didn't have me here, or like have any of us here to help take care of her. And unfortunately, that's a real reality for a lot of people, not just in the Fort Lauderdale and Miami area, but it is, the whitehead capital of the world, so to speak. There's a lot of
yes, it is.
Or not of the world, but in the US. So I think that's really important. I'd love to shift gears and talk about how you have balanced self-care, full-time job, part-time building the business, traveling, taking care of your grandma. Like, what are some techniques, tactics, tips that like either you learned through coaching with me, whether you learned before or after, that you feel like would be really supportive for someone who's building their business while working full time?
Well, that's a great question, Katie. And I'll share with you that it was not pretty at the beginning. I had recently started the job that I'm in now
Mm-hmm.
and really enjoying it, but it's still a lot of pressure because it was new, and there was pressure to perform. And at the same time, I I almost wanted to prove to myself that I could do this with the business. And I
Mm-hmm.
was putting tremendous pressure on myself to do both. So it was not pretty at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is I struggled because I'm an achiever, and putting pressure on myself was not healthy.
Mm-hmm. But
And
it
then
wasn't healthy, but it was what you were
you,
conditioned to do. It was
to
normal
do
for you. Yeah.
right, it was normal for me, but I felt that I was I want to use the word forcing it.
That's fair.
Things need to, yeah, things need to happen in their time. It doesn't mean you don't have to work towards it. And the thing that helped me with our coaching, Katie, was two things that come to mind. First of all, the balancing of personal what the personal things that I'm going through to make this happen. And then also knowing that I have someone, a coach, to keep things moving and moving forward. So it's not like I was dropping things. It
Yeah,
was
like
okay.
accountability.
Yes, I still had accountability, and I felt it was inching forward.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, I was able to pause and say, okay, it doesn't have to happen by this deadline. Like I had it in my mind, it's going to happen by this deadline, everything, and that's it. I'm moving into doing this. And
Mm-hmm.
no, it doesn't have to be that way. It could
Sure.
happen for someone like that. But, but this is uh, when I make a commitment to a client, uh, I'm making a commitment to be available, to be present, to be supportive, and to do that, I need to have the capacity, the time
Hmm.
to do that. So I feel like being in the full time work that I'm in
Mm-hmm.
gives me peace of mind because I have a good salary. I enjoy what I do. My
Mm-hmm.
brain, I'm learning, always learning. So I'm extremely satisfied professionally.
Right.
And this is like giving birth. The business, the My Health Concierge, is like giving birth. And it's a long pregnancy.
Yeah,
But
it might be 9 months, it might be 10 months. They might
it,
just be marinating in there.
right, exactly. And there are pauses because you asked about self-care. I enjoy traveling. I I enjoy working out. I enjoy my family. I like to have fun. You know that about me,
Oh,
right? I'm
yes, I
not going to
do.
miss an opportunity to go out or do anything fun.
Was the best trip I ever took was with Marlène in Miami. Boy, did we have fun. And
Yeah.
side note, I got to see your real life experience because I
Oh,
had to go to
true.
the emergency room.
True. I forgot about that.
Yep,
Oh,
we're in the middle of dinner, and I'm like, I don't feel so hot. And we start talking about my symptoms. She's like, cool, let me call the doctor, see if they're there. We take
yeah.
off. I'm in and out of the hospital in 10 minutes, and I look at her, like, feeling like shit, but like out of the hospital, realizing everything's fine. And I look at her, and I was like, yeah, you're really fucking good at what you do. This business is gonna take off.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that was
Wild. But yes, we had a
live
blast before, during, and
live and in
after.
person. Yeah, that's how it works. And having an advocate, having someone oh wait, was it COVID at that time? I didn't even go in with you, remember?
You're right. It
Or
was, yeah, COVID was still pretty rampant, so you stayed in the car. But
yeah. So
yeah, it was like
so yeah,
2021.
so I had to stay in the car. I had the communication going.
Hmm.
But again, that whole need for, let's say, a portfolio, if you have that, if ever there's a situation again where we can't get access, you
Right.
know,
I
there's
know what you mean.
always a way to communicate. But yeah, so the self-care part, going back to that, is extremely important. I found for myself, I already put enough pressure on myself professionally, and that's how I balanced is, yeah, I'm not going to stop traveling, I'm not going to stop having fun, I'm not going to stop working out. I had moments, like, for example, if I was on a roll, I was working on something on the
Hmm.
business, and I was on a roll, I would keep going. I would
Right.
keep going.
Yeah.
And but overall, kind of releasing that pressure and allowing things to evolve organically, and still knowing, yes, anytime I talk about this, or anytime someone calls me, I have another uh validation
Mm.
of the service, the value proposition
Yeah.
that I offer.
Amen. And I think I want to go back to something that you said in just a second, but just want to reiterate what I heard you say too is, I think a lot of people who are starting and growing their businesses, no matter where they're at in the phase, are putting so much pressure on ourselves to be successful. And so when I say successful, and I have air quotes going on, one of the questions when I'm coaching clients is I'll say, well, what does success mean to you? Because we don't really define it. So we're putting all this pressure on ourselves to get to somewhere where we don't really know where it is. So I say, okay, pause. Let's look at what is success. Does it mean you get to do your workouts? Does it mean you get to travel? Spending
Hmm.
time with family? Or spending more time with your baby? Like, what is your thing that you want to do? Is it making more money? What does more money look like? Like being so specific. And I remember walking in Nashville, I was on a coaching call with you,
Hmm.
and I had given you that advice, that feedback of saying, you either are going down this path and you're choosing to maybe go with partners, or do you go just solo? And the discussion was really go solo, let fly,
Hmm.
let's do this.
Hmm.
And I think many people run into that same scenario. Like, can I do this on my own, or do I need support? Will it actually help me? I want to go in two directions as we finish this conversation. I want to talk about the support you've hired. I know we talked about business coaching. I know you've had the chance to work with my assistant Kelly. It's like,
Hmm.
let's talk about the when you knew it was time to hire, because that's a question that gets asked a lot. But I want to
Hmm.
circle back first to something you said, because you said it really quickly. You said, when it comes to the things I've learned from you for business coaching, the first was emotional. And like you didn't really elaborate on that. And then you
Hmm.
went into the whole like self. So I'm wondering, could you go back for a second and if you remember what you said about that sort of emotional component? Maybe it was related to the pressure, but if there's a live example that you're up for sharing, I think it would be really helpful.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, because I was thinking that as you were talking, two things that I feel tripped me up during that time,
Hmm.
and made me, kind of, well, the first is my self-doubt. So, and that's why I felt like I needed partners, because I didn't know what I was doing, right? I've never started my own business. So I was afraid. So that fear and self-doubt created this anxiety.
Yeah.
And so that, I feel, was something that I needed to eventually lose, get rid of. But that was only through building my own confidence and working with you, and slowly, and then realizing, no, I can do this, and it doesn't have to happen overnight. In my mind, it's like, oh, businesses, you just start them and there they go.
Right.
No, it
Right. Right.
doesn't
Right.
work that way.
Yeah. No.
And it is like giving birth, it is like creating, and it's like molding. That's how I think about it, and okay, shave a little bit more off here or add a little bit more here. And eventually you pause and you're like, oh, wow, okay, yeah, we're ready. And
Mhm.
I didn't want to also overthink things, but I still felt like yeah, I needed to get rid of that self-doubt. And then the second thing, and I'm a little bit embarrassed about this, but I'm going to say it anyway because I feel like it
Go
was
for it.
my shift, part of my shift. When I first thought about the business and I was talking to my partners at the time, I was focused on the money.
Mm.
And that's not me. It's not that I don't like to make money. I do that in my current job. It's not that. And I have nothing against money. Let it flow. You
Right.
know,
Right.
bring it
Let it
on.
flow.
Yeah. However, intention is everything. And I see it in my life over and over again, whether it's in relationships, how you approach something, the intention in which you approach something makes a difference. So that initial intention of, making all this money, it was misaligned.
I can totally relate, by the way.
Okay.
So, two quick things. Thank you for your brutal honesty because there are people listening right now going, fuck, that's exactly what I've been doing, or that's
Mhm,
exactly how I've been feeling. I just got off
mhm,
the phone with somebody who's a new coaching client who was talking about the self doubt. She's in the very
mhm,
first step, maybe second step of building her business. And I said, just so you're aware, you're about to get a creative burst, but you're also going to have a burst of self doubt. So when you do,
mhm,
bring it here, right? Like that's the time you text me. Because it's so common. And I think we think, and I certainly felt this way, that like I'm doing something wrong or I don't know what I'm doing. And I
mhm,
think that's why I ended up going into business coaching after the relationship coaching because I really struggled with the self doubt and I really struggled with the money piece. Like I was always hearing that you should do it for the impact, you should not do it for the income. But in the same
mhm.
breath, then you'd have all these people I was following who were making a shit ton of money and being like, but it's not about the income, it's about the impact. And I was like, fuck you
Mm.
guys. Like, you're
Yeah,
making millions. Like, of course you don't think it's about the money. I'm over
exactly.
here trying to pay rent. Like, give me a minute. I'm trying to go to Whole Foods. I don't want to now go to Market Basket. Like, I don't
Yeah.
want to downgrade my life, right?
Uh-huh.
And so I think I lost my way a little bit. Like, and I
Mhm,
lost it in the sense that I was trying to grow my money mindset so that I would be willing and able to receive more and be in
mhm.
that environment. I remember you were on a group coaching call and everybody's putting their numbers in of what they want to, and you go, oh shit, I'm
Yeah.
going to add a zero, and it
Right,
was
right.
great because we all kind of expanded in that moment of like, oh shit,
Yes.
I want to make 500,000 or I want to make 1 million.
Yeah.
And
Mhm,
what I'll say too about that is like it's really brutally honest. So I thank you for that because what I found that I had to do was I still had to work on the money mindset in the sense of
mhm,
I can learn how to receive more. There is nothing wrong with wanting more. It
mhm.
doesn't mean that I'm addicted to wanting more. It
Right.
means that God has given me and all of us this ability to receive. And if we are willing,
Yes.
and if we are willing to even for some people who are of color or different backgrounds than you and I, they've
Yep.
had to jump through bigger fucking hurdles than you and I have to be able to get to where they want to go. And we still all get to receive money and we get to have a really amazing life. And I've had to work really
Yep.
hard at that because I didn't come from that kind of
Yep.
background.
Yep.
And then shift to say, oh, wait a minute, these women who I'm following who are $1 million business owners actually are saying something really important if I look. They're saying, I have a God given talent that I responded to that I didn't know I had. But the more that I put that at the forefront and say, the more that I provide concierge services to an elderly person, the more that their longer term life the last chapter is amazing and they're supported and they're safe, right? And it's that
Mhm.
level of peace of mind for them but their family, right? For me, it's being able to have people follow their dreams and work through the self-doubt and be able to
Yep.
achieve so many things from a confidence perspective, whether it's love, workouts, money, you name it. There's a level of impact. And so then once I'm in that like being of service, money
Mhm.
flows, and to the point where I'm like, no, okay, wait a minute, hold on.
Yes,
It's awesome. But I think it's
it
so
is.
honest that I think every business owner at some point in the first year slash multiple years has these divots where we just are doing it for the money and we
Yeah,
don't mean to. We're still being of service to our clients, but in the back of our head, it's coming from a fearful place like, shit, I want to do this full time. How am I going to get there? What
right.
do I do? And then also the piece about self doubt. I love
Mm-hmm.
what you said. Like I didn't know what to do, so I thought I needed partners. What I realized I needed
Hmm.
was a business coach. I needed somebody
Right.
to remind me that we're going to just take one step at a time. And as we reach one step, like for example, before we make your website, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
First thing we're going to do is figure out what is the problem that your client is having, and then what things can we offer them so that they can buy from you to get the support that they need to solve the problem. And that's
Yep.
what I remember for you. We came up like three different options, and then we fine tuned it. Maybe it was down to two, and then we went back to three. And that's what Marlène was talking about. Like you need
Mm.
time because I always say to people, come in for 6 months of coaching, but plan on being here for a year, and then plan on
Right.
being here for multiple years if you want to, just depending on where you're at. You don't need to, but it becomes a want because now you realize, oh, okay, I've gotten some success with the offer that I've created, and I'm realizing that I'm either charging not enough or I now need to hire. And so, as
Hmm.
we kind of wrap up in the last like 5 minutes that we have here,
Yeah.
you talk about two things. One, the moment when you realized you need to hire to get help so you can move this business along. And then the last thing I wanted to ask you is what advice would you give somebody who is working full time and building their business?
Okay. So I realized I needed to hire when things were dropping. Like well, two things. Things were dropping, such as, staying on top of accounting things, remembering to renew memberships. I mean, simple things.
Hmm.
Because, during season when I'm busy with my full-time job, I relinquish a lot of other things,
Mhm.
to have balance in my life. So I realized that, number one. And then the other is, because I have such a strong passion for my business, My Health Concierge, I I wanted to get information out to people. I wanted to get it out on social media. I wanted my website to have enough information and blogs to provide information to individuals seeking support.
Hmm.
So with my assistant Kelly, who you introduced me to, she is phenomenal. I feel like
Right.
she's my right hand,
Mm-hmm.
and we work very well together. And yeah, so that's I feel also with that support that I can have consistency with reaching out and keeping myself relevant. It keeps me accountable too.
Two quick things on that. I think a lot of people ask, do I need to be making money in order to spend the money? And so I think what we decided as we were coaching is like, hey, it's minimal cash. I mean, you guys, you can hire an
Mhm.
assistant for $11 or you can hire them for like upwards to 75 an hour. The best part about it is you want to get time back, right? So what Kelly
Yeah.
our assistant, can accomplish in 30 minutes would take us an hour and a half. And
Oh my gosh.
Marlon just brings up a really important point before we go into her last question, which is, you know, you have to prioritize. It's not that you don't have time to do this shit. You do. But
Mhm.
for me, I always look at when somebody says to me, "Well, I don't have time to do that." It's like, "No, no, no, you just didn't prioritize it because other things took priority," which is totally cool. But you still need to get the shit done. So who can we leverage to get that done?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then the conversation of, well, money comes up. And so that's where the money mindset stuff comes up. It's like, okay, but like it will cost you $45 to do this right now, or it will take you 2 hours.
Mhm.
What do you want to do? And I'm
Mhm.
like, all right,
Mhm.
I'll pay the $45. It's fine. So I think that's really important. So for anyone listening, cough up the 45 bucks. If you need an introduction to
Yeah.
our virtual assistant, happy to do that. We also have other connections with people who can support depending on what's going on. So for anybody who's listening and you're like, who would Katie recommend? Email support@katiegrimes.com. I'll answer you directly and make an introduction to who I think would be best based on what you got going on.
Yeah, I feel like peace of mind There's
Right?
no price you can put on that, you know?
Exactly.
And I feel like I've regained my peace of mind knowing that I have someone staying on top of things and I'm not constantly worried about, did I forget?
Wholeheartedly. So
Yeah.
last question here as we go, and then everyone will have a chance to follow you on Instagram and look at your website because we're
Hmm.
gonna put that in the show notes. What advice would you give someone who's building a business while they're working full time?
Um, I would say to be patient, be grateful. You know, there's a gratitude for having a job, a full-time job that serves you, right? And that full-time job, the way I look at it in my current life, helps support the building of my business. So I would say the first thing is gratitude, and the other then is patience. You know, if you believe in what you're building, it will be built, and just give yourself the grace to do that. And use the sources that you have, like you know, training. I mean, coaching with you. I say training, but I felt like I had training wheels on when we first started. But you know, really getting the support and the advice and the guidance, and use it, you know, because it especially at the beginning, I feel like it could just give you that extra support that we can all use when we're starting a business. um,
Absolutely. I think the
yeah.
last bit of advice that just came up is depending on who you ask support for. For those of
Hmm.
you listening, make sure that the person is grounded. What do I mean by this? Are they following up with you constantly, wanting you to sign up? Are they saying they'll discount it? Like, are they up your ass to try to get you to sign? If that's the case, they're not a great person, whether that for you at that time, because similar to what we said, they're probably coming from a place of income, not impact, right? So that's
Hmm.
something to just be mindful of for anyone listening. You really want that sort of grounded peacefulness. I'll get back to you when I get back. Like, I sent you the information, you make the choice, you come. If you have questions, great, no big deal. And I think Marlene and I both operate our businesses that way. Sadly,
Yeah.
Zoom is going to cut us off in just a minute. So what I'm going to
Okay.
say is for everyone listening, please go ahead and hit the show notes so you can check out Marlène on Instagram as well as in her website. There's a consultation link in both areas that you can reach out to her on and just have a free call, like to understand, hey, can Marlène help me with my parents or my grandparents down in the Fort Lauderdale, Miami area? And that being said, Marlène, I am so happy that you came on. It was so good to see you. And
Oh, it was
I'm
great.
gonna I'm gonna audio message you once we're done.
Okay, sounds great. Sounds awesome.
All righty.
Thank you,
Health and
Katie.
happiness, everyone. Bye.
All right.